Welcome to The Art of Healing, a show about ordinary people overcoming extraordinary circumstances. I'm your host, Julia Tilley, a recovered addict and an abuse survivor. I decided to create this show so that I could help others share their stories to inspire the world to become better. Here's today's episode. Hope you enjoy. I think we've got a wonderful show coming up for you today that you're really going to enjoy. Today our guest is Stephanie Marie, and she talks to us about many things from abuse to addiction. She talks about her recovery and how to set boundaries and why those boundaries are so important. We also speak more about self-love and how to work on self-love after you've been through addiction or abuse. Welcome to The Art of Healing. I'm your host, Julia Tilley, and today our guest is Stephanie Marie. Stephanie is a recovered addict, an abuse survivor, and a mother. She started a support group on Facebook for women survivors of domestic violence called Sisters in Purple. We met a little over a year ago in an online domestic violence support group after leaving our abusers. She has been a huge factor in my support system and is one of my closest friends. It's a blessing to have you in my life and to have you as my first guest. So, why don't you tell me a little bit about your story?
I try to call myself a warrior now. My son and I together have overcome a very dangerous situation. His father was father was abusive, very physically and emotionally towards both of us. And when my son was 6 weeks old, he was taken into custody of CPS due to multiple fractures in his legs. And so now I've started giving back to women, especially mothers who witnessed their children be abused and getting lost in themselves and scared to leave because of the abuse.
That's so awesome. I'm so proud of you for how far you've come and how much you've done to help other people. I really am proud of you, and I appreciate everything you've done to help me too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how long were you in this relationship?
I was with my abuser for about a year and a half.
Whew, year and a half is long enough.
From different stories I've heard, these women who were with their abusers for 10 years. It's not like a one-up thing, but I endured 10 years of abuse in those 18 months. It was awful.
Exactly.
And from what I've learned, there's a cycle to domestic violence and abusers and narcissists. They all have these different tactics, and the flow of the honeymoon stage to the escalation to I think it's a climax, and then it just starts over. That was a day for me. That was all in a day. So
Yeah, it's definitely very rough. I know I was in for 4 years and it felt like a million years. I mean, every day
mhm,
just went so slow and it was just
mhm,
so hard for both of us to get out, but I'm really glad that we both did. Um, but I know that you, during your circumstances, you tried to get out, you tried your best to try and figure something out, but because of those circumstances, you really struggled with that. How were you able
mhm.
to get out of that relationship? And how are you able to start over after that?
So I managed to escape with my son once, and he smooth talked me back the next day. And so that kind of falls into on average, an abused woman, it takes them 7 times to escape. It took me getting arrested on old warrants. I literally was pulled out from him. And thankfully, in those 4 months when I was in jail, he moved on to a new supply. He found a new victim. And I don't say that as in thankfully, it's someone else and not me. It's that his attention went somewhere else. I've tried to help that young girl since, and
I know that's been a real struggle with you as well.
yeah. And as far as starting over, I started over from scratch. Moved back in with my parents.
Mhm.
Um, I started with nothing. I had no clothes.
Mhm.
I when I left the jail, they'd sent me home in paper clothing. Um, but I've since kind of brick by brick started over.
Yeah, I know how hard that is because I did the same exact thing. I went back to my parents,
Hmm.
and I mean, to heal, you really have to start from scratch. You have to dig down deep inside and figure out
Hmm.
why you felt like you needed to be with that person. What was it about you that made you feel like that was okay at the time? It's
Right.
something that you really have to work on, and it's a hard process. But one thing I learned is that you have to heal, or else you could end up hurting other people in the same way. So,
Right. Or you end up right back in that same cycle with the next abusive man or woman.
exactly, exactly. What would your advice be to other domestic victims um, that are still living with their abuser? Hard question,
To
I know.
save up and store that one little drop of hope.
Mhm.
Between my story and your story and the other friends we've made throughout this journey, it's possible. There are times you do have to start from scratch, but if you reach out to like your crisis centers or domestic violence shelters and stuff, they will help you prepare money, clothing, toothbrushes, whatever you need. They'll help you get that plan set up. But that ounce of hope is what you need, that drop to know it's okay to start over, that you will get better, you will be better in time. It's going to hurt, it's going to suck, but that's why we're here. We're here to help lift people up and help them start over, to find that greener grass on the other side.
Well, you're doing a very good job of it, I have to say.
Trying.
So, as your friend, I know that one of the unhealthy ways that you used to cope with the abuse was with drug use.
Hmm.
So how were you able to get clean, and what were your reasons for getting clean at the time?
My son is what got me clean. I've gotten clean before, so I knew I could do it. Um, but whoa, are you okay? Sit in the chair. Yeah. Sorry. He was on his trampoline and he slipped on a paper. It
I'm just
scared him.
glad that he's back home.
Yeah. So my son is what got me sober and losing my mom. I lost my mom in the process of healing, and it made me realize that my sobriety is just as important as he is. I grew up with a mom who drank. My dad was a drug addict, and I don't want my son to have that childhood. He doesn't deserve it. I didn't deserve it, and it's part of breaking the cycle. So
When you were with your abuser, he was a drug user as well, wasn't he?
no,
No.
no.
Okay.
And being with him, I was sober while him and I were together. It was after I got away that my drinking escalated.
Mm.
It was every night to help me sleep. It was hair of the dog to get the shakes to go away in the morning. Um, my my ex before him, it was meth that I was on to get through the emotional abuse.
Yeah, that's really rough stuff to try and get off of. That's for sure.
Hmm.
So I'm really
I won't
proud of
touch it
you.
again because I know the type of person I became, and I know what I had to do to keep the hustle up, and I'm too old for that.
Yeah, and it's not worth any of the hassle.
It's not. It's not. My son doesn't deserve a mom who's barely present because she's high or drunk or
Exactly.
so.
So along the way, you have learned healthy ways to cope with your stress. What has helped you the most in your recovery?
My support system. You are president of Supporting Steph Incorporated. And then I
Woohoo!
have Alex. And then I have my dad. And I have, a lot of these smaller people that I'll turn to. But it's been nice having like you to talk to or the people in our support groups because I felt so alone in the beginning.
Hmm.
And when I found NDV, I was just like, wow, these people are amazing. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
so,
What is the full
but I've
name of that?
also started meditating. I've started, um, I have a journal again. I don't really have any other outlets besides that, but
Well, meditation and writing are very,
hmm
very good outlets. I definitely agree with
hmm
you on that. My
hmm
one of my counselors in the past always told me to write down the things that are stressing you out. You can tear it up or you can burn it, but that's called your poison pad because you get
hmm
all the poison from the inside out and you just let it go. So that's a
yeah,
wonderful way of coping.
right.
So, one of the unfortunate circumstances of that abuse, which you spoke about earlier, was losing your son, Bentley. How long did you have to fight to get him back, and what were some of the struggles that you faced along the way?
Let's see. Bentley was 6 weeks old when he went into protective custody. No, baby, mommy's on a call. Relax. Here. Um, one of the one of the things was he was taken into custody at 6 weeks old. Um, I was given what's called reunification, which was a process of yes, he's coming home. He was a year and a half old, so about a year and a half I fought CPS. It was parenting classes, therapies, drug court for my alcoholism, um, and then a lot of the stuff I did on my own, like finding the support groups and um, building that foundation and that support network. And one of the one of the things I dealt with was the county didn't want me to have my son back. They thought I was an unfit mother because the way they made it sound, I sat back and let my son be abused, and that wasn't the case at all. I was so beat down that I didn't have the confidence or the energy to even think about leaving. Um, and thankfully, my judge saw all of my hard work. He saw the changes in me. He saw my passion to be his mother, to be the good mother that he deserves, and he overturned CPS's recommendation. Um, so Bentley has been home since September last year. So
Woohoo!
6 months. Yeah. and we go back to court on the 12th. Hopefully to close the case. I actually just talked to my worker. She came out Tuesday, and they don't have grounds to keep my case open. They're going to file and request it, but they don't have grounds for it.
That's
So
super
hopefully the judge will
awesome.
see that too and say, dismiss, get out of here. I don't want to see you again. So, but I've dealt with our abuser trying to reach out to me, trying to manipulate me. I haven't heard from him in well over a year now. But it took me changing my phone number. It took me changing my address.
You had to change your Snapchat. I mean,
Snapchat is gone.
I remember all of that.
Mhm,
I mean, because he just kept messaging you under different names, and
mhm.
he found
He would
really
download
clever
texting
ways to.
apps.
Yep.
Mhm,
He was very clever at trying to find ways around the system to make sure that you would get in trouble. But you did the right thing and
mhm.
you changed everything. So that's why you're where
Yeah,
you're at, and I'm proud of you. And I can't even believe
yeah.
it's been 6 months.
I know.
It's
I
crazy.
I didn't get my son's first birthday with him, but I did get his second. And for him to just turn 2.5 a few days ago, I'm like,
He's getting big.
yeah.
So, do you have any other advice for women that are fighting the system trying to get their children back
Put the
because of
work in.
domestic violence?
Right. Put the work in. Um, it's worth the fight. It is absolutely worth the fight. I watched a lot of women and men in the system, and they didn't get their kids back because they chose their abuser. They thought, oh, well, he'll change, or she'll change, or things will get better. They don't get better, they get worse. And nobody should come before your children besides God and your sobriety. But I even had to tell my son's family on his dad's side, it's either Cole or it's Bentley. You don't get both. And they've all chosen Bentley.
Well, I think that's a very good choice for all of them.
So, well, yeah, it's, if you're fighting the system trying to get your child back, choose your kid.
No
It's going to be an
contact
uphill
is
battle.
always the best option.
Hmm.
So, um, switching topics a little bit here. I know that setting boundaries is something that you believe that's extremely important. It's something that you've really kind of helped me with, and there's been a lot of times where I've really struggled with setting boundaries, and you've kind of got on me, given me a little smack on the back of the hand, and been like, "Hey, you need to speak up and say something." So I know how important that is to you, and it's something that you've been working on very diligently. So why do you believe it is necessary to set boundaries with others, and how is setting those boundaries help you to lead a less stressful life?
Because if you don't set the boundaries, people are just going to continue to walk all over you. That's how abusers find us. That's how we end up in a lot of terrible situations. I do have one person, even today, I still struggle setting boundaries with. And you know who that person is.
Hmm.
um, they're they're so important because if you don't, then you take on someone else's issues. And like me being the person I am, I was raised to be in tune with other people's feelings, to read a room, so to say. And now that I've been able to tell certain people no or tell certain people sure, but within this this range. I still feel guilty, but at the end of the night, I sleep better. I don't worry about, well, I told him yes, so I have to do this tomorrow, so I have to, you know, help them. I have to do these things that I don't want to. It's okay. Boundaries to me are part of self-care. I feel like I'm babbling. They're part of self-care because if you're worried about someone else, you can't take care of yourself.
And it's funny because I just heard this awesome quote the other day that said, sometimes saying no to others is saying yes to you. And
Absolutely.
sometimes it can be hard to say no, especially when it's somebody that you care about, but you have to think about yourself as well. And like you said, it's a part of self-love.
Hmm.
So, how have you been learning to set these boundaries? And can you give us an example?
One thing I had to learn was to listen to my instinct, to my intuition, to my gut, because I shut that voice off years ago. So if someone asks you to do something and it gives you a nauseous feeling in your stomach, that's your body telling you say no, don't do it. Um, and so I've been handling it by eh, with this family member when I am able to say no. I get sick to my stomach. Absolutely. I get nauseous even after I say no. I get that guilt nausea. But then I have to tell myself, not my circus, not my monkeys. And I feel like I'm like a B word now, or I sound like a B word when I do this. But at the end of the day, I sleep better. My son and I live better. My son and I are happy. And that's what's more important. Not everybody else. And so when that guilt kicks in, it's not my circus, not my circus, not my circus, not my job, not my problem. And that's what you need to tell yourself too. The world's problems aren't our problems. They're not your problems. They're not my problems.
You need to
And let it
always
rest.
work on yourself first before you can
Hmm.
help anyone else.
Right. You can't pour someone's half full cup from an empty cup.
Exactly. I always love
So,
that it just makes so much more sense when you look at it that way.
hmm
So, while we're on the topic of self-love, I know that that's something that we've both really struggled with for probably most of our lives, I would have to say. Um,
hmm
just guessing, but I know I have for sure. Um,
yep.
we've both worked on that a lot together, and we're slowly getting better. But why do you believe that self-love is so important?
Because we can't be loved properly by our children or our spouses if we don't love ourselves. They can't see the beauty in us unless we know it's there to radiate
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it.
it.
So, what are some self-love practices that you engage in to help yourself heal?
I have affirmations that I've been doing for over a year now. Um, but they're simple. It's one of them is I'm worthy, I'm beautiful, I'm a good mother to my son. Um, I love me, be me. I'm strong. I'm a warrior. Um, and those are just some of them, but I do that twice a day. And when you tell yourself something enough, you believe it. And that's why we didn't know self love or self care because we might have been told those things, but we didn't believe them. And if you hear something enough, you'll believe it.
and we told ourselves the wrong things over and
Mm-hmm.
over again. And our
Mm-hmm.
words to ourselves matter extremely. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you on that.
We are our own worst enemy.
Exactly. That's very true. Unfortunately, that's the truth.
All right.
So, moving on. How has learning self-love helped you in your recovery?
It's taught me to put myself before just about everybody else. That I'm important to. That I'm enough. Because that was the biggest thing I always struggled with was not being enough. So that it's important to love me too.
That's very,
I
very
love my
true.
son, but I love me too.
And like you said earlier, in order to have that strong, loving bond with your son, you first have to love yourself.
Hmm. Exactly.
So
I can't expect him to love someone that I don't love.
exactly. That makes complete
Hmm.
sense. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add before I give you the last final questions?
Just reach out. Anybody struggling, even if it's just verbal. I don't say just verbal. If he's calling you bad names or slamming doors, get help. Get out before it gets worse because it will.
Because like you said, it definitely will. It always starts off slow. With my abuser, it was 6 months before he ever hit me. He like slammed some doors. He threatened suicide a couple times. Um, but I mean, the actual abuse and the physical abuse didn't start until 6 months. And when I look back, I see so many red flags, and I'm sure it's the exact same way for you, that now
Hmm.
it's like, holy crap, why did I not see that? But like you said, a lot of healing and self-love has made us, and a lot of learning has helped us to see those red flags in other people and learn to stay away.
Right. Like I don't want to get into another relationship where I'm choked or my fingers are dislocated or it's and you have to accept yourself enough and know yourself enough and know your worth enough to know that you don't deserve that. There's no reason to ever deserve that.
Never. It doesn't matter. I know for the longest time I really struggled because I wasn't a perfect person. I was an ex-addict as well. Um, and, he used to play on those things with me. And it
Hmm.
would be like, well, you're a bad person because you did this. And you're actually the narcissist. And, you're the sociopath. And, they're really, really good at twisting things. But once
Hmm.
you get out, you're able to kind of see things a little bit differently. And once you aren't under that constant psychological control, um, it does take a while for your brain to kind of get back to normal. Some people it takes a lot longer than others. But
Hmm.
luckily, it seems like we've had a pretty good run. The support system,
Hmm.
between us and our friends, between our support groups, have really, really helped us get through a lot. So I really encourage anybody, like you said, if you are struggling, if you see any red flags whatsoever, speak to someone, try and get help, and get away from that situation before it gets ugly.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Alrighty, well, I've got three final questions for you here. Or actually, I'm sorry, I have four final questions for you. Kind of off topic, but if you had unlimited money and resources, how would you use that to impact the world?
I would have to go back to, wanting to buy a great big lot of land and build our little compounds on it and go and rescue all these women and children and let them live, let them be free, get them away from their abusers or their parents or whatever because of the danger that they're in. Teach them how to be self-sufficient. 'Cause that took me a long time to learn too because my abuser was in charge of the money. He was in charge of the cars. He was in charge of, so I didn't really know. I did, but I didn't know how to do all that.
Mhm.
Um, you know, get the kids into school and therapy and let them be kids, let them play in the dirt, let them ride their bikes and just have life again. And I would do it, I would do here in California, I would do like a two in the middle of the US and then one on the East Coast.
Just spread
Or one
all the
towards the
love
north, one towards
around.
to have them all over the place.
I know that's been a big dream of ours for a while, and I feel like if we
Hmm.
keep going, someday we'll accomplish that goal. So
Absolutely.
hopefully one day, crossing fingers. Okay, so if you could share one very important piece of advice to the world, what would that advice be?
It does get better if you put the work in. Um, it's not always going to be easy. Even almost 2 years away from, or no, yeah, 2 years away from my abuser, um, I still, I still struggle. I still have nightmares. I still get scared. But I have more good days than I do bad now. You just got to put the work in.
Good advice. I love it. I love it. And what is the most important lesson that you think you've learned so far?
Patience.
Patience is a good one.
I've had to learn patience in so many aspects of my life lately. Just be patient. You can't control it.
Yep, if it's out of your hands, being frustrated is only going to affect you, not anyone else.
Hmm.
So there's no point in being frustrated over something you can't control.
Like that thing you shared the other day, let it come and then let it go.
Exactly. Just like meditation, you let it come inside your mind and then just let it
Hmm.
flow right on down the river away from your mind and relax yourself. That's what you have to do with all of those negative thoughts. Just let it come in and flow right on out.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, and my final question for you. What is your definition of growth?
Definition of growth. That's a good one. It would be evolving and adapting to positivity in life, embracing positive change. Because there, you either adapt to the dark or you adapt to the light. And plants only grow in light. And those tears are water.
Very true. Well, it has been wonderful speaking with you. I'm so glad I got to have you on here today. Um, I'm
For
so
sure.
excited that we got to do this, and maybe someday again we'll have you back on the show to speak more about your journey and how everything is doing with Bentley. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and I hope you come back for more. Please like and share on whatever platform you are watching or listening to this on. Maybe it might inspire or save someone's life. Thank you for being here today. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your week.